A young nurse covers a bleeding stranger with her coat, not knowing he's the city's most feared Mafia boss. When he reappears, gratitude turns to obsession, and her act of mercy becomes a debt written in blood. The rain had already been falling for hours, the kind of steady, bone-deep storm that turns the city into a mirror of its own sins. Streetlights flickered against the wet pavement, and the hospital behind me pulsed with sterile light and the faint smell of disinfectant. I was walking home from another double shift, the kind of night where every step feels heavier than the last. Then I saw him. At first, I thought he was just another drunk left behind by the night. A shape slumped beside the alley wall, a dark coat soaked through, one hand pressed against his ribs. But then he moved, not weakly, not drunkenly, but like someone used to pain. When the lightning flashed, I saw the blood, not the kind from a fall, the kind that comes from a bullet. I should have called someone. I should have turned away, but something in me refused to let another man die alone in the rain. So I ran to him, dropped my umbrella, and pressed my coat against his wound. My hands shook. His breath came in short bursts, but his eyes, those cold, impossible eyes, stayed on me the whole time. Like he was memorizing my face in case he didn't make it. He didn't say thank you. He just whispered something I couldn't understand, Italian maybe, and reached for my wrist before his body went limp. When I called for help, no one answered. Not at first. Then 2 black cars turned the corner, headlights slicing through the storm. Men in suits stepped out, silent and efficient. One of them lifted him from the ground like a child. Another picked up my blood-stained coat. They didn't say who he was, but one look at their faces told me I'd saved someone I should never have touched. By morning, the news said nothing about a shooting. No names, no traces. Just the rain washing away another story the city would never tell. I thought I'd never see him again. I was wrong. Because 3 days later, someone left a single black envelope at my door. Inside was my coat, clean, pressed, folded with impossible precision. And beneath it, a note written in ink as dark as the night I found him. You saved me once. Now I owe you a life. The signature was just one word. Moretti. And that was the moment I realized mercy had a price. For 3 days after the envelope arrived, I tried to pretend it never happened. I folded my coat, slid it into the back of my closet, and told myself that kindness doesn't always come with consequences, but the city has a way of whispering reminders. Every night I walked home, I felt eyes following me, the kind of presence that lives in reflections, not faces. A car idling too long across the street, a shadow that lingered after I passed. Maybe paranoia is what mercy leaves behind. At the hospital, life moved in its usual rhythm. Bright corridors, quiet suffering, the hum of fluorescent lights that never truly rest. I took extra shifts, anything to drown out the sound of the rain that still lived in my head. Mara said I looked tired. She joked that I was married to my job. I didn't tell her about the man in the alley. I didn't tell anyone, but the coat, my coat, haunted me. It smelled faintly of smoke and something sharper, like gunpowder trying to hide beneath cologne. Every time I touched it, my heartbeat echoed in my throat. I should have thrown it away. Instead, I hung it by the window, as if part of me wanted proof that it was real. On the 4th night, I stayed late in the trauma ward. A stabbing victim, a motor accident, a teenage boy who wouldn't make it till morning. The city keeps giving us broken things and asks us to stitch them back together. By the time I left, the world outside had gone quiet again. That eerie, breath-before-the-storm silence. I stepped out into the parking lot, and that's when I saw it. The black car, sleek, still running. No one inside. A single envelope on the windshield of my rusted sedan. Inside, another note. You walk home alone too often. No signature this time. Just a silver cufflink, engraved with the letter M. I told myself not to panic. I told myself it was some twisted prank, but deep down I already knew what it meant. The man I'd saved hadn't forgotten me. He was somewhere in the city, alive, watching, owing me something I never wanted. That night I locked every door, drew every curtain, and sat awake till dawn. The city outside breathed like a restless animal, and somewhere in that darkness, I felt the weight of a debt I didn't know how to pay. The fourth day began like every other, the illusion of normal life wearing the mask of routine. Coffee gone cold on the counter, rain clouds gathering again, just to remind me that nothing really dries in this city. I told myself I would work a double shift and forget the note. But by noon, I started noticing the details that didn't belong. A bouquet of white lilies left at the nurse's station with no card. A man in a charcoal suit sitting too still in the waiting room, sunglasses on though the sky was gray. He wasn't reading. He was watching. When our eyes met, he stood, smooth, deliberate, and said my name like it was a secret he'd practiced. Elena Ruiz. Just hearing it in his voice made my pulse break rhythm. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Moretti. The way he said it made the room colder. He handed me a folded paper, the kind used for invitations or warnings. Mr. Moretti requests a meeting to express his gratitude. Not a question. A declaration. I told him I was working, that I couldn't leave. He smiled politely, but his hand lingered on the note just long enough to make it clear that saying no wasn't part of the script. When I looked again, the lilies were gone. That evening I sat in my apartment with the lights off, rereading the note until the words blurred. Every instinct told me to burn it, to disappear, to move cities. But another part of me, the one that had knelt in the rain and pressed my coat against a stranger's wound, needed to see the truth for myself. To know if I'd saved a man or unleashed something I didn't understand. At 10 p.m., a black car waited outside my building, engine humming like a heartbeat. The driver didn't speak. He only opened the door. The city blurred past. Bridges, neon, wet asphalt, until we turned into a gated drive I'd only seen in news reports about people who never went to prison. A mansion of glass and shadow. Inside, everything was silent. No guards shouting, no footsteps. Only the tick of a grandfather clock echoing down the hall. And there he was, Adrian Moretti, the man from the alley, alive, whole, terrifyingly composed. No bandage visible, no weakness, just those same eyes, colder now, but not empty. He stood beside a piano, a drink untouched, like he'd been waiting for me since the moment I left him to the rain. "You shouldn't have saved me," he said. His voice was soft, almost regretful. "You should have let the storm finish what it started. I wanted to run, but I stayed." He stepped closer, the scent of smoke and winter clinging to him. "I owe you my life," he said, "and I always pay my debts." He reached into his pocket and set something on the table between us, my hospital ID badge. "Believe this belongs to you. I didn't remember losing it. That's when I realized it wasn't gratitude that brought me here. It was control. And mercy, once again, had put me exactly where he wanted me, in his world, under his gaze, where debts are never forgiven, only collected." For days after that night, I told myself it hadn't meant anything. He'd thanked me in his own strange way. I'd survived the encounter. That should have been the end of it. But endings don't come that easily in this city. They linger like bruises you can't explain. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, standing by the piano, calm as the storm outside. The way he said my name, not like a threat, not quite a promise, just inevitable. I tried to return to work, to listen to heart monitors instead of my own heartbeat. But even the hospital started to feel smaller, like the walls were keeping secrets. Someone sent pastries to the nurse's lounge. No note, but every box sealed with a silver M. I threw mine away. Mara laughed, said I was lucky to have a secret admirer. She didn't understand. In my world, gifts were warnings with sugar on top. At night, I left my windows open just to prove I wasn't afraid. But I still caught myself checking the street, waiting for the black car that never came. It's strange what fear does to a person. It doesn't just make you hide. It makes you imagine the very thing you're running from. I began to wonder what he was doing, if he was still healing, if he thought about the rain. And when I realized I was wondering, I hated myself for it. One evening, I found the coat again, the one I'd used to cover him. It still smelled like smoke. I pressed my hand over the spot where his blood had soaked through. The fabric was smooth now, cleaned, pressed, but the weight remained. That coat had touched both life and death. Maybe I had too. Sometimes compassion isn't clean. It stains the parts of you you didn't know could be touched. I started hearing his voice in my head. You shouldn't have saved me. Maybe he was right. Because now I was the one who couldn't sleep, the one whose pulse raced at every knock, every shadow, the one haunted by a man I barely knew. I told myself it was fear. But part of me, the part that remembered his eyes, knew it wasn't just fear. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous, curiosity. The world noticed before I admitted it to myself. People started watching me differently, as if they knew something I didn't. 2 detectives came to the hospital one morning. Their badges flashed like apologies. A shooting, they said. A name whispered in alleyways. Adrian Moretti. They wanted to know why my name was on his list of protected witnesses. I laughed because it sounded ridiculous, but my voice cracked halfway through. After they left, my supervisor called me into her office. She told me to take a week off, for your safety. That word again. Safety. It used to mean quiet nights and locked doors. Now it meant being watched by men I didn't know, in cars that didn't belong to me. The same afternoon, I found Mara waiting outside my apartment. She'd heard the rumors, that I'd saved a criminal, that he was sending gifts, that I was involved. She begged me to leave the city. I told her it wasn't that simple, because leaving felt like running from the truth, and part of me needed to know what truth I'd touched. That night, a package arrived. No return address. Inside, a small velvet box. No jewelry, just my brother's old watch, the one stolen the night he was killed. And a note in that same deliberate hand. Some debts are paid in pieces of the past. I dropped the box, but I didn't scream. Because suddenly, the line between protector and predator blurred. If he'd found the man who killed my brother, what did that make him? Avenger? Monster both? The next morning, the detectives returned. This time they weren't asking. They warned me that the Moretti family was under investigation, that anyone tied to him could vanish just as easily as evidence. One of them asked quietly, "Did he threaten you?" I opened my mouth, but the truth tangled in my throat. How could I explain that the threat wasn't in his words, but in how gently he spoke them? Later, when I stepped outside, the city felt smaller. The sky hung low, heavy with rain that refused to fall. A car door clicked open behind me, the same sound as before. I didn't have to turn to know whose it was. "Get in," he said. His voice carried no command, only inevitability. And though every cell in my body told me to run, my feet didn't move, because for the first time, the danger wasn't outside anymore. It had found its way in, to the part of me that still believed mercy could fix a monster. The next morning came too quietly. The city's noise, the chaos that usually filled my days, felt muted, as if everything was holding its breath. I told myself I wouldn't see him again, that the night in his car was the end of it. But by noon, a message arrived at the hospital front desk. A single line on hospital stationery. "You deserve to know the truth." It wasn't signed, but I didn't need it to be. A car waited outside again, and for reasons I still can't explain, exhaustion, curiosity, or the hollow ache of unfinished fear, I went. His mansion looked different in daylight. Less like a fortress, more like a place haunted by silence. Adrian met me in a glass conservatory overlooking the river, sunlight cutting through the gray water, touching the scars on his hands. "I know what you think of me," he said. "I don't blame you, but the man who killed your brother, he worked for me." The words didn't land all at once. They hung there, between the light and the truth. He didn't look away. He disobeyed me. He brought chaos I couldn't control. I didn't pull the trigger, but I might as well have. I couldn't breathe. It felt like the room had tilted, the glass and sky spinning around the one thing that would never move again, the past. "So why tell me this?" I asked. "Because you deserve to hate me," he said quietly. "And because I wanted you to know, that night in the rain, you saved a man who didn't deserve it." The truth cracked something open inside me. Not rage. Not forgiveness, something worse, understanding. He wasn't confessing for peace. He was confessing because he wanted me to carry the weight with him. He reached into his jacket and placed a folded file on the table. "Your brother's case," he said. Everything the police didn't find. Inside were photos, reports, and one name circled in red. The name of the man who had ordered the hit. "And beneath it, the word deceased. I ended it," Adrian said. "That's the debt I owed you." I stared at him. At the man whose world had taken everything from me. Who'd avenged it like a twisted act of love. For the first time, I didn't see the monster the city feared. I saw the man he used to be. Or maybe the one he wished he was. But mercy is a knife with two edges. And in that moment, I realized the truth wasn't his gift. It was his trap, because now I couldn't hate him cleanly. And he knew it. That night, I didn't go home. I walked along the river until the city lights blurred into the water. 100 reflections of choices I couldn't undo. For the first time since that night in the rain, I stopped being afraid of him. I was afraid of myself. Because somewhere between mercy and guilt, I had started to understand him. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. I opened the file he'd given me again. Page after page of blood and silence, names that no longer existed, men erased from the city's history. He had done what the law never could. He had given me justice, in the language of monsters. The next day, I went back to the hospital. I smiled when Mara joked. I took my rounds, but something in me had shifted. For years, I had lived like a ghost, helping others live because I didn't know how to myself. Now I wanted to choose. That evening, I found him waiting outside. No guards, no cars, just him. "I shouldn't have told you," he said quietly. "You look at me differently now." "I see you clearly," I replied. And I don't know what that means yet." He looked away, the smallest hint of a smile ghosting across his face. "Then maybe there's hope for both of us." But hope is a fragile thing. It doesn't arrive as forgiveness. It arrives as understanding. And understanding is the first step to freedom. Over the next few days, I began setting boundaries he didn't expect. If he sent flowers, I left them on the doorstep. If his men followed me, I told them to stop. And they did. When he called, I answered, but only to tell him what I believed he'd forgotten. Gratitude doesn't give you ownership. He didn't argue. He only said, "Then what does it give me?" And I said, "A chance to be something else." For the first time, I saw him falter. Not as a threat, but as a man who didn't know what to do with gentleness. He said, "You saved my life once. Let me save yours." I told him, "You can't. Not until you stop trying to own it." That was the night the rain stopped. For weeks, the city had lived under clouds. But that night the air cleared, and moonlight touched the streets like forgiveness that didn't need permission. I went home, sat by the window and realized something simple. I couldn't erase the past, but I could decide how to live after it. He had power over everyone, but not over who I became. And that was the first moment I truly felt free. Freedom never comes quietly. It arrives with the sound of breaking glass. It was a Thursday night when the world reminded me that peace in his world is only ever temporary. The hospital was quieter than usual, most of the city still asleep, except for the ghosts who work the night shift. I was stitching a wound when I heard the first explosion, distant, muffled, too heavy to be thunder. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. A moment later, the alarms began. When I ran outside, I saw smoke rising from the direction of the river. Flames reflecting in every puddle. Every instinct screamed that this wasn't random. It was a message, and before I could think, I heard my name. "Elena!" He was there, Adrian. His shirt stained, not with his own blood this time, but someone else's. His men were gone. His calm was gone. Only the look in his eyes remained. That same impossible focus from the night I found him in the rain. "They're coming for me," he said. "They won't care who you are." He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "I told you I wanted peace," I said. "You brought the war here." His voice broke for the first time. "You think I wanted this? You think I wanted you anywhere near it?" Then I saw it. A small cut across his cheek, the faint tremor in his hand. Even now, half the city hunted him, and he was worried about me. He said, "There's a car waiting by the back gate. Take it, leave the city, tonight. And what about you?" He didn't answer. The silence was worse than the sirens. Then, from the far end of the parking lot, headlights. 2 cars. Gunfire shattered the air. He pushed me behind a pillar and fired back. Precise, mechanical, like a man who'd been living for this moment all his life. When it was over, he was on his knees. Blood again, spreading fast beneath his hand. I pressed my coat, that same coat, against his wound. History repeating itself in reverse. "You shouldn't have saved me," he whispered again. And I said, "You don't get to decide who deserves saving." He tried to smile, but the pain took him first. The sirens grew closer. I stayed with him until they pulled him away, until my hands were red with mercy again. In the chaos, a paramedic asked if I knew him. I said, "No," because by then I didn't. Not really. When the dawn came, I stood outside the hospital. The air smelled like rain, though the sky was clear. The world was quiet again, but not empty. Some debts can't be repaid. They can only end. It's been 3 months since that night. The city has learned to breathe again. Slower, softer, as if it too needed time to heal. They say the Moretti organization is gone. Some arrested, some vanished. Adrian's name stopped appearing in the papers the same week the last of the smoke cleared. No one talks about him anymore. Maybe that's the closest thing men like him ever get to peace. Silence. I still work the night shift. Still walk home under the same tired streetlights. But sometimes when it rains, I pause before crossing the alley where it all began. The puddles still mirror the lights, and I can almost see him there. The man on the ground, the storm around us, the moment mercy and madness became the same act. My coat still hangs by the window. The bullet hole stitched shut, the fabric clean but heavier than it used to be. Some nights I reach out and touch it, not to remember him, but to remind myself that I was brave once, even if it cost me more than I understood. People think courage is loud, running into fires, standing in front of guns. But sometimes it's quieter. It's the choice to keep caring, even when the world teaches you not to. It's covering someone with your coat, even when you don't know if they'll destroy you for it. The last time I saw Adrian, he was bleeding on the same pavement where I'd found him months before. When they took him away, I never asked where. I didn't need to. Some stories don't end in reunion. They end in revelation. I've learned that mercy isn't weakness. It's the kind of strength that doesn't ask to be seen. And love, whatever we had, whatever name it deserved, was never about owning someone. It was about seeing the part of them still worth saving and walking away when that was done. Sometimes at dawn, the river shines silver again, and the city smells like rain. That's when I whisper a small prayer, not for him, but for every heart that ever mistook compassion for safety. Because I know now, mercy saves lives, but it also changes them forever, and that's the kind of debt I'll never stop paying. Mercy doesn't choose who deserves it. It chooses who you become after you give it.